Hello and welcome back to JVSCP. Now, 2 weeks ago, we finished the first part of There Is No Antimemetics Division, which was made up of 5 chapters. So now we're going to be moving on to the second part, but first, there's going to be a little bit of an interlude. It actually just says interlude right here, which is an SCP entry titled Very Tall Things. I also happen to know that this is immediately followed by more SCP entry type text, so this week's video is gonna be obviously a reading of the book, but it is very lore heavy. This is pretty much like a fucking lore dump chapter. So I advise you to stay extra vigilant this episode. I don't know if that's the right word. Pay attention. That's a better one. Pay a lot of attention. There's a lot of details in this one, and it lets us know a lot of stuff that we might have been wondering about. With that, let's get to it. Interlude. Item number SCP-2256. Object class Euclid. Special containment procedures. Information about SCP-2256 is subject to a gradual antimemetic corrosion effect. Corrosion occurs at differing rates depending on the level of detail/accuracy in the information and the physical complexity of the storage medium. In-depth academic papers, photographs, and information stored electronically decay rapidly. Broad descriptions, pencil sketches, and paperwork decay slowly. Therefore, this electronic database entry should describe 2256 only in broad terms. Detailed information about 2256's appearance, theorized evolutionary ancestry, biology, diet, behavior, vocalizations, life cycle, intelligence, ecological role, and cultural significance should be stored in hard copy at Site 19, Vault 1-053. The rate of corrosion in both data sources should be monitored carefully, although at present no technique is known for halting or undoing such corrosion. Although these antimemetic effects linger and rate Euclid classification, SCP-2256 itself is extinct and requires no special containment procedures. Description: SCP-2256, Cryptomorpha gigantes, is a species of gigafauna which was endemic to the South Pacific Ocean around the islands of Polynesia. 2256 was one of the very few recorded species known to have developed rudimentary perceptual/antimemetic camouflage, rendering them nearly impossible for other sentient beings to perceive or remember. This adaptation is theorized to have arisen in order to elude predators. 2256 was the largest species to have lived on Earth. Resembling spindly, vertically elongated giraffes or brachiosauruses, adults of the species grew to over 1,000 meters in height. They weighed no more than 4 tons, with most of their mass being camouflaged by a very similar adaptation. With their broad, dish-shaped feet, they were able to walk directly on the surface of the ocean without sinking. 2256 navigated the ocean alone or in of 2 to as many as 2,000 individuals. They were reluctant to approach land, especially inhabited islands, usually staying more than 30 kilometers offshore. Because of their height, they were visible on the horizon at this distance. Acquisition. Polynesian natives on the island of Maikiti used a substance called teukoka for recreational and religious purposes. As well as being a moderate psychedelic, this drug had nestic properties, suppressing antimemetic effects and making entities camouflaged in this way easier to see and remember. Thus, the Maikitians were, for hundreds of years, the only people able to see 2256. In Maikitian mythology, 2256 were wandering spirits whom the gods had charged with maintaining the horizon, to ensure that the sky and the water never mixed. They were characterized as well-meaning and friendly, but unintelligent, and often deficient in their duties, resulting in storms and typhoons. They were called Pulu Ungakau, the ones who walk very slowly. In 1991, an internal biochemistry study revealed that Theococa bore a strong chemical resemblance to the Foundation's own Class W nestic. A Foundation anthropologist was assigned to follow the Mike Hidden legend and became the first outsider to observe 2256. An observation was quickly on the island to study the creatures. Routine containment analysis found that 2256 was safe and required no special containment procedures, or even particular secrecy. SCP immediately proved to be impossible to capture photographically. Photographic negatives of the species faded into transparency over a few minutes. Similar decay affected videotape, audio tape, celluloid film, digital and electronic scans. The observation team soon returned most of their equipment to inventory and proceeded using pencils, and at the time it believed that such recordings would be effectively permanent. SCP-2256's population declined slightly in 1992 and 1993, then dropped sharply from 1994 onwards. A combination of contributing factors were observed: illness, infertility, and a rate of stillbirths. In 2002, a field generator was developed which could penetrate and neutralize 2256 antimemetic, allowing for conventional photography. The first and only close-up photograph of one of the creatures instantly killed it. It was concluded that direct observation of 2256 is injurious to. This adaptation is believed to have arisen as a means of detecting predators, just as 2256's antimemetic camouflage protected them from those same predators. Use of generator was immediately curtailed. It was subsequently hypothesized that the Foundation's ongoing passive observation of the species was intense enough to have harmful effects on 2256, and that was what was driving the species' extinction. Opinions differed sharply on the veracity of this hypothesis, over thoroughly it should be tested, and over what would be done if it proved to be true. Several extreme options were, including exterminating to preserve the data and completely expunging the data to preserve 2256. No firm conclusion. In 2003, observation of 2256 was scaled back significantly, and the Foundation focused from gathering data to analyzing data. However, SCP-2256's population continued to. The last individual died near Tukalau, October 30th, 2006. 2010 discovered the antimemetic camouflage, also characterized as decay or corrosion, was spreading through paper records of, as of more 60% documents are even with strong nestic dose. The effect is even SCP entry itself, despite shielding and redundancy in the system. Since extinct, data about it can be generated. It is that full contamination 3 to 8 years. Part 2 55555. Item number SCP-3125. Object Class Keter. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-3125 is kept inside Cognitohazard Containment Unit 3125 on the first floor of Site-41. This containment unit is a 10 meter by 15 meter by 3 meter cuboidal room clad in layers of lead, soundproofing, and telepathic shielding. Access is through an airlock system at one end of the containment unit. This airlock is programmed to allow only one person to enter the containment unit at a time, and to remain locked until this person exits before allowing another person to enter. Under no circumstances may any coherent information be allowed to leave the containment unit. This includes written and electronic notes, photographs, audio and video recordings, sound, electromagnetic and particle-based signals, and PSI emanations. During the exit cycle, a purge system rigged to the airlock flushes the occupant's memory by flooding the airlock with amnestic gas for 3 minutes. A senior antimemetics division staff member must visit 3125 every 6 weeks, 42 days. End of file. Item number SCP-3125. Object class Keter. Special containment procedures. SCP-3125 is subject to inverted containment protocols and is present everywhere in reality except for those places which have been specifically purged of its influence. The interior of Cognitohazard Containment Unit 3125 on Site-41, where this document resides, is the only location in the world known to have been successfully purged in this way. This containment unit is a 10 meter by 15 meter by 3 meter cuboidal room clad in layers of lead, soundproofing material, and telepathic shielding. Access is through an airlock system at one end of the containment unit. This airlock is programmed to allow only one person to enter the containment unit at a time, and to remain locked until this person exits before allowing another person to enter. Under no circumstances may any coherent information be allowed to leave the containment unit. This includes written and electronic notes, photographs, audio and video recordings, sound, electromagnetic and particle-based signals, and PSI emanations. A purge system rigged to the airlock flushes the occupant's memory by flooding the airlock with amnestic gas for 3 minutes during the exit cycle. An alternate SCP entry must be maintained in the main Foundation database, giving only the technical specifications of the containment unit, provisions for senior antimemetics division staff to visit the unit's interior on a regular basis, and no description. Description: SCP-3125 is an extremely large, see full dimensional fractal topology, attachment 13. Highly aggressive, anomalous, metastasized meme complex originating externally to our reality and now partially intersecting it. SCP-3125 is adapted for survival in an ideatic ecology considerably more violent and hostile than our own. Here, our own refers to human headspace, the set of all ideas which humans have or are biologically capable of having. Because humans have no natural exposure to ideas as aggressive as 3125, human minds have no protective evolutionary adaptations against it. Individuals possessed by 3125 become incapable of entertaining weaker, conventional ideas and become instead wholly bodily subordinate to the purpose of serving and disseminating the core concepts of 3125. In addition, although undergoing no outwardly visible physical alteration, they cease to be externally recognizable as human. SCP-3125 is not yet entirely present in our reality. Upon its arrival, the highly interconnected nature of human knowledge exchange systems means that it will take no longer than 12 hours, possibly as few as 4 hours, to encompass, dominate, and replace all human thoughts. At this point, humanity, as an abstract concept, along with all attendant abstracts such as civilization, culture, society, community, and family, will have ceased to exist. The Foundation terms such an eventuality as an MK-class end-of-the-world scenario. The Foundation possesses numerous proven techniques for arresting the spread of such aggressive idea complexes, but these are all rendered unworkable in practice by SCP-3125's autonomic defensive response/boundary layer. Fully assembling a mental picture of 3125 and perceiving its true shape causes 3125 in turn to be able to perceive the observer. It then attacks the observer, killing them. The mechanism of the attack is unclear, but appears to be at least partially physical. Mental bystanders, individuals whose thoughts and ideas resemble those of the observer, are also attacked. This invariably includes the observer's entire extended research group, and often their close family, parents and offspring. The attack has the net effect of erasing all knowledge, both of 3125 and its attack, from the world. This informational numbing effect performs a similar function to the anesthetic saliva of a mosquito's bite, enabling SCP-3125 to evade detection prior to its full incarnation. Foundation staff discovering 3125 may be able to escape its attack via prompt use of amnestic medication to erase their knowledge of it. In either case, the net result is that the interior of a suitably shielded containment unit is the only location where it is safe to observe, record, or even acknowledge the existence of 3125. Outside of such a containment unit, a true written description of 3125 would constitute a lethal cognitohazard. SCP-3125 could be effectively neutralized using a machine proposed by the late Dr. Bartholomew Hughes, called an irreality amplifier. See Schematics, Attachment 129. However, as well as requiring tremendous material resources, this machine could not be constructed without its builders understanding why it was being built, which would require an understanding of 3125, which would prove fatal to the project. No means of neutralizing 3125 using only the resources in this room is known. History. Due to the described defense mechanism, SCP-3125's observation history is almost entirely missing. In particular, it is unclear exactly how this containment unit came to be built and how these containment procedures were established. Much data has been accrued in this containment unit over the course of successive visits by Foundation researchers. This data was brought from the outside in the hope of being useful and left here in accordance with containment procedures. In addition to this database entry, the reader will find multiple electronic copies of the Foundation database, academic datasets of all kinds, and extensive public news archives. As is to be expected, much of this data is not germane to the topic of containing 3125. Nevertheless, correlation and analysis by successive visitors has allowed the following facts to emerge. 1. Although SCP-3125 is not yet fully present in our reality, its indirect effects / foreshocks, for example SCP, and SCP, are easily discovered by any well-equipped memetics research project. 2. Memetics research is today a much diminished science from when it was at its peak. In mid-2008, there existed more than 400 institutions pursuing research likely to uncover 3125, including government agencies, military branches, private corporations, independent laboratories, university research projects, and notable amateur groups. Many of these were groups of interests or internal divisions from within groups of interest. None of these groups still exist, except for the Foundation's antimemetics division. 3. Almost nobody in the world is consciously aware of this decline, and explanations for the disappearance of these groups have not been forthcoming. Simple deduction gives that all of these groups eventually discovered 3125 and were consumed by it, and that this is, in fact, the inevitable fate of all competent memetics research. The Antimemetics Division's persistence is attributed to its specialist training and its ready access to reliable amnestic medication. Despite this, the Division too has shrunk considerably in recent years, from a reported staff of well over 4,000 people in 2012 to, as of September 2015, 125. This figure is on track to reach 0 before the end of 2015. Over the same period, the Division's physical worldwide presence has similarly shrunk, from a network of sites and smaller outposts on every continent to this single site, Site 41. In particular, the Division's headquarters at Site 167 are now missing from the Division's collective memory and presumed neutralized by 3125's concealment response. Addendum. Further analysis of the available data, specifically architectural diagrams of Site 41, Attachment 38, indicates the existence of a second containment unit on Site 41 conforming to the same basic design philosophy of this one. This second unit, S041B3000, was built 210 meters below ground level. It features identical broad-spectrum informational cladding, but has more than 1,000 times the volume of Cognitohazard Containment Unit 3125, along with an amnestic airlock large enough to ingest a 20-foot equivalent unit shipping container. Information relating to the date of construction and purpose of S041B30000 is absent from Foundation records and is presumed to have been deliberately erased. The unit itself is hermetically sealed and has been for an indeterminate period of time. Regardless of S041B30000's intended purpose, it, like any such containment unit, is capable of acting as a shelter from 3125. Addendum 2. And the rest, hopefully, is blindingly obvious. B30000 was originally constructed to house a long-term project to construct Hugh's reality amplifier. While that's been going on, the rest of us have been fighting an unconscious war in order to buy time. We have been losing, but losing as slowly as humanly possible. The time we have bought is up now. It's an extremely bad sign that nobody inside of B30000 has broken the seal yet. But there is no ground left for us to cede, and there are no more bodies to throw into 3125's maw to slow it down.
Data
Is here, ready or not. I'm gonna go to B30000 and use the machine. I think I can get the information out through the airlocks. I think I can get to the vault alive. This was the plan. It's become garbled in the retelling because of variables, but I know that this was my plan, because I know myself. What else could it have been? Standard procedure is that I have to tell you what to do next if this doesn't work. That's the asynchronous research covenant. But I don't have a good picture of who you can even be, reading this and alive. In your scenario, there is no machine. Hughes is missing. I'm dead. The site is ruined. And how do you even get in here? Can you be Foundation? Are you conscious? Is there a single word of this which you comprehend? You live in a world bathed with SCP-3125. That's the loss condition. I can't help someone who doesn't exist. Marion Wheeler, Chief of Antimemetics, November 30th, 2015. I found your body. Finding your body was a powerfully disorienting sensation for me, I don't mind admitting. I used to know Marion. During the brief period in which I knew her, she wasn't one to admit defeat as easily as you. Still, that was a long time ago. Far be it from me telling you your business, but I fear you missed the trick. From the evidence I can see, this was never the only Antimemetics Division site. There were others. I imagine they're now all effectively invisible to most passers-by, of course, just like this one, but I presume that they, just like this one, still physically exist. Your plan, I think, was in place for longer than you knew. And since you weren't at liberty to retain its details, you put it into action more than once. There is another vault fitting the description, truck-sized amnestic airlock and all. S167001-6183. Site 167 is a non-entity, of course, which is most likely why you missed it. It's likely ruined, and it's quite definitely a long goddamn way from here on foot. But still, I think it's better than half a chance. I could die on this boondoggle too, naturally, as the world has become something of a horror show of late. In any case, I trust that anybody following in my footsteps and reading these additional words will have the presence of mind to pursue the same basic strategy. Still existing, despite everything, Adam Wheeler. Interloper. May 4th, 2017. End of file. So, like I mentioned in the intro, that's quite the lore dump, and I want to start with acknowledging the accent of Adam Wheeler. So here's the thing. I don't remember for sure, but I feel like it is mentioned where he's from, and it is not wherever my voice makes it sound like he is from. It's, I don't know, I do some sort of Australian British hybrid thing. I don't know. The thing is, first time I read this book, I was reading it aloud to my girlfriend, and just to like differentiate the characters, I would usually give them somewhat of an accent. And when we came to this part, I just kind of did it in, yeah, this sort of weird British Australian accent. And now in my head, that is how he canonically sounds. So I will note, I don't think that's actually canon. That's a JVSCP original, to have him have that goofy accent. And I'm sorry if you're like from any place in the world that my weird accent might be sort of like a offensive parody of. Like if you're from Australia. But do know that I'm not actually doing Australian, and I'm not actually doing British. This is another, third secret accent. That being said, yeah, like I said in the intro, this is very much a lore dump type interlude / opening chapter of part 2 of There Is No Antimemetics Division. I feel like I've said a lot of this already, but it truly expands and lets us know a little bit more of how the whole 3125, that's the number, right? How his whole, the logic like works, how he's like reaching into our reality, and the concept of mental bystanders is very interesting. So like people close to you mentally that hold a lot of the same information, retain the same types of knowledge and stuff, and not to be forgotten, because it's kind of easily forgotten, I think, after all of that 3125 stuff. Fucking bombshell of having someone named Adam Wheeler. So in case you didn't connect the dots here, the main character is Marion Wheeler. So and she mentioned an Adam in like some earlier chapter, and she was like, who's Adam? When she was hearing her own like recording or reading her own notes, she was like, who's Adam? And then she realized it must be someone that she has forgotten. And now we're getting a little bit more, and I think that's very interesting. But we shall not forget SCP-2256, which is, I think, the actual like interlude part, and then after that, you know, we get into part 2, chapter 1, the escapee. But man, I love the 2256 creatures. These like tall, ginormous, seemingly friendly sort of dinosaurs that walk on the surface of the water, and the indigenous people of the area have their fucking ayahuasca equivalent that they take. Ayahuasca, is that the word? For the thing you take and then you go trip? It is, right? The one that like Locke in Lost smears on Boone's head, forces him to have a trip. That's a little reference for all the Lost fans watching. Should make a video about Lost at some point. But man, I love those creatures, and the fact that the indigenous people have this like mythology around them gives it that sort of, yeah, this is probably how this would have been included into their like culture if this, you know, if this was all real. I mean, it is real, obviously. I mean, I'm sitting here with a lab coat on, so obviously it's real. Thank you so much for watching this week's JVSCP video. It was a little more like our other videos and not as much like a book reading, seeing how it was mostly SCP entries. So, but I'm gonna assume that you don't mind. Thank you so much for watching. Extra huge thank you to our patrons, a warm digital embrace to all of you. I've said that before, and YouTube members for that matter. If you'd like to support the channel, we'd really appreciate it. Like $1 still does a lot. So that you can do that by hopping on over to the Patreon page or by becoming a YouTube member. With that, I'm gonna stop talking and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.